Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Invincible After Show, brought to you by Agents of Fandom. Today, I am your host, TJ AKA Fat Thor, and I am also joined by my wonderful two co-hosts, Sean Mott from Collider and Metalcore Nerds. Sean, how you doing today?
Doing great. After rewatching this episode, I'm just sad and stressed, I think. Sad and
it's a
stressed.
sad one. It's definitely a sad one. TJ, how you doing today? Are you still reeling from this episode this morning?
You know, I'm reeling from something. I was telling you guys off screen, I'm feeling like a big old fool because they sent out the new screeners for review for Daredevil Born Again. I didn't apply because I thought I've seen the first two episodes. I'm good. And then lo and behold, they sent out the whole damn season. And so I just can't think about anything else other than the fact that I could have been watching Daredevil today and I'm not. And so I'm very happy to be here with you guys to take my mind off of that. So I'm not just sitting there stewing in it, talking a little bit about Invincible. And this should be a fun one because we have all seen the same amount of episodes now. We're all like caught up. We can all theorize together. I mean, obviously, TJ Fat Thor, you know what's going on in the comics, but we can all theorize of how they're going to adapt things in the TV show altogether. So great episode of Invincible. Happy to be hanging out with my friends. And like always, feels extra fun to, not have to be the main host. I feel like my analysis game is so on point when I'm in the co-host chair.
It's great, isn't it? Don't get me wrong, I love hosting, but that's one thing I absolutely love about a Comic Corner, which shameless plug, check us out every Saturday. But Damon handles all the logistic of that. So shout out to Damon. It makes things so much easier. But we have a decent amount to talk about and not much time to do it. So let's get into this episode. And before we start, I want to remind everybody, obviously, we don't have a special guest this week. So y'all watching and in the chat, you are our special guest this week. So I urge everyone, all the things we talk about, all the questions apply to you too. So let us know what you think in the comments. But let's get into it. Episode 6. I almost said episode 5. It's a rough one. It's a sad one for sure. This is one of my favorite stories from the comics. It's pretty much just issue 59 with a little, sprinkling in of some other issues here. But what did you guys think? Not having kind of this idea of who Powerplex was. TJ, I'll throw it off to you first. Overall thoughts on the episode, and what did you think of Powerplex?
Powerplex stuff was super interesting. I did have a tough time kind of like really buying into him as a threat for Mark and Eve, but I did think this was a really enjoyable episode. You get to see kind of the realism of, oh my god, what if there were these super power people in real life, and you just get to see like the mental health ramifications that have on everyday people kind of throughout. And I do enjoy anytime we get one of the little stretches where it's like, damn, Mark just seems happy, things are going well, I know it's all gonna turn around, but I'm going to enjoy it while it's here. And so yeah, I enjoyed this episode quite a bit.
Definitely savor the good moments, take them when they come. Sean, what'd you think of this episode?
Yeah, it kind of echoes what I've talked about this whole after show. Is one of Invincible's biggest strong points is consequences. And this is a massive consequence from season 1. Again, a lot of these tiebacks to the earliest moments in the series that I love that we get stuff like that. I wish we got more stuff like this in media in general. It's great to see. And what a like the cold open is brutal, man, because you don't know, you just like, oh, look at this cute little family, he's just going to get some coffee, and then as soon as you see what's going on, you're like, oh man, this is awful. And I love when superhero stuff shows the perspective of like a human element. It always makes things so much more terrifying. And I did want to add the comment you brought up from Sensitive Blick. Very curious what's gonna happen in these last 2 episodes. I only vaguely know what's gonna happen, and all I can tell you is torment and pain. That's what's gonna happen in these last 2 episodes.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Yeah, it's we talked about this I think last week, but unfortunately, that's why I say take the good moments when they come, because y'all need to savor those, because things just get worse and worse and worse. And you led us in perfectly to our first topic of discussion. Speaking of things getting worse, we're introduced to Powerplex, kind of get a little bit of his backstory and see that he was there for the fight between Invincible and Omni-Man, which resulted in the death of his sister. And interesting point I want to point out, which I thought was really cool. Shout out Paul over at Heavy Spoilers. Go check out his breakdown. But he mentioned how you can actually see Jessica and the kid in season 1. They show them falling out of the building and Mark tries to save them, but it's like obviously we don't know who those people are. So I thought that was a really cool detail to add in. But yeah, it's brutal. It makes the beef a lot more personal, I think, because in the books, Powerplex wasn't there when she died. He got a call from her, and also she was just a college kid. Like, she didn't have a kid. It was kind of very different. So I feel like it really hits home on why this affected Powerplex, which, I mean, obviously it affects him either way. His sister dies in both versions, but definitely makes it a lot more intimate. And I just feel, to your point, Sean, before I throw it off to y'all, to me, Powerplex is basically a visual representation of Mark's mistakes. And this is the first time, which this will be a recurring theme, not giving away spoilers, but this is the first time that Mark is like truly faced with the mistakes that he made and like has to face those mistakes and discover like who he is, even with, the damage that comes from him being a hero. So that's what I really love about just all of the Powerplex stuff. But Sean, what you already alluded to this, how brutal and like sad this opening was. So you got anything more to add to that of just, just despair?
I guess kind of piggybacking off what TJ said, how he didn't feel like Powerplex was like an actual threat to Mark. I don't think that's the point of having him be an actual physical threat. It's more of like a mental threat to him, which is this whole season is placated on his actions and the consequences of said actions and him being scared that he's going to, become his father. And then it's even more complicated as we see this kind of, underlying redemption arc of Omni-Man. And there's that big conversation that I'm sure we'll get to with Oliver talking about like his fond memories of his father. And it just really complicates that whole thing. And we've been talking about this whole after show about how is Omni-Man redeemable? And it just adds to that question. And I love just the realistic take on superheroes this show takes, because they really dial into like every action has that certain consequence, and like, is taking lives the right thing to do? Is taking the villain off the playboard is that we should do? Or like, we shouldn't kill like the villains, we shouldn't be like them. And seeing just kind of like an innocent bystander kind of consequence from that. And as you mentioned that the heavy spoilers point of like, you can see the actual characters. I remember rewatching the episode this morning when he's like holding the severed arm after he's tried to save that building. Like, think of that as like or even as a human, you're like trying to save someone's life in this crazy whatever kind of situation, and all you're left with is a limb in your hand. Like, that's traumatizing, on top of the fact that you found out your father was an evil alien sent to conquer the earth. On top of that, it's a pretty rough day in the office of Invincible. And
yeah, you can say that.
And you can understand where Powerplex is coming from. And I think it was cool to see him, how he was so dedicated to taking down Invincible, or at least making him feel the pain he felt, that he worked for the what's the name of the GCA?
GDA.
GDA?
Yeah, GDA, Global Defense Agency.
Like, not infiltrating, like getting a job there so we can learn more about these superpowered individuals. And that's obviously how he got the enhancement, so he could have a bigger power set than what he normally has. Because as they even they like me rewatching that opening scene is like, oh, his power is like nothing, and he needed those things to amplify it to a level where he could at least get Invincible's attention. And I like how he frequently shows up in the episode trying to get his attention, and then it takes multiple times for him to get there. And I was like, what a cool kind of like narrative way to present this within the show. And of course there's like a million other things going on as we'll get to. Like every time I rewatch an episode, I'm like, how do they fit so much in these episodes? It's crazy. Every time. It's insane. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, what a compelling character, and what a get Aaron Paul to voice this character. I already love all the Breaking Bad Invincible memes. The Invincible marketing team is always on point. So the memes with that have been A+. So that's just an added bonus.
Yeah, he was the perfect person, I think, to play Powerplex, because I mean, I'm sure everyone out there has watched Breaking Bad at this point, but he really can bring that like emotion, right? That like, because I mean, Jesse is very much in a similar situation in Breaking Bad, where he's just kind of lost and caught up in all this. But yeah, I really liked how they involved him in the GDA, because excuse me, in the book it like specifically says like he works in the Pentagon, but it specifically says he does not work with the GDA, and like has no. All right, we got to end this show. All right, everybody.
Episode 6 short. Invincible.
Yeah, episode 6 was great. Episode 6 was great. Powerplex was awesome. Very sad. All right, see y'all later. But yeah, like I said, I thought that was interesting and definitely added to, again, like making his beef with Invincible more personal, and just like he's seeing how there is no consequences for him. But meanwhile, like he's getting berated at work. He's the one who, he gathers these signatures, and the, state or whatever is like, yeah, we can't help you. So TJ, same question, but with the added bonus of what we're just talking about here, like him trying to do the right thing, trying to go through the proper channels, but it doesn't work for him. But so what do you think about all this and his determination?
I mean, where the determination is targeted and the way that it is solely focused on revenge and retribution are the reasons that make Powerplex, a bad guy, and not just like a guy you feel really bad for. But at the same time, I do love how this show explores the trauma of what that would be like living in a super powered world where you got these insane aliens battling for power above you, and you just feel so helpless and there's nothing that you can do. And I think it really makes that an increasingly real feeling situation, having him try to go through the proper channels and explain these to people and just feel let down by the system, because that's something that people go through every day in real life. Is bad shit's gonna happen always, and often there's nothing you can do, but you want to try and do something. And when you have the hope that there is a system in place that's supposed to help you here, and you just get completely left out in the dark, which I mean, I feel like is in this political climate, especially where you guys are in the United States, as people are losing healthcare and things like that, it's understandable to be angry at the system and to feel helpless. And so I love how they explore these human elements in this superhuman show.
100%. It really adds to bringing real stakes in Invincible. And I feel like that's one of the things that really separates it from other comics is there are stakes and people do die. It's not like, there's a famous saying in comics, like no one's ever truly dead, but Invincible is not afraid to do that. And like I said, bring real stakes into it, which I love. And I want to just highlight this comment really quickly to mess with Damon. But if you have not read the Book of Mark, if you are supposedly a comic book fan, you have your nerd card is revoked if you have not yet got into the Book of Mark, because it is one of the best books ever. But moving on back into the episode, Oliver, our
like the
boy.
Bible, or
What'd you say?
like the Bible or the Book of Mark? What are you talking about here?
Invincible, the Book of
I
Mark,
know.
obviously. In the
Making a very shitty joke.
us in the Invincible cult, we know it as the Book of Mark, our holy grail, our reason to live by. But Oliver, dude, Oliver, that little psycho, I'm coming around. I'm coming around to Oliver. I feel like they are doing a really good job of making him more likable in the show. And I dig it. I dig it. It's the same but a little different. But what do you guys think about Oliver? Especially, like you said, I obviously think of him as a little freak psycho, but you guys have been more on the Oliver train than me recently. So what'd you think about, like I said, him, excuse me, his continued training, and then we'll get into the Thrax and stuff, which I think we might have talked about last week. But Sean, Oliver, you love him, you hate him. What do you think about our little Thraxan boy?
I find him very endearing, to be honest. And that young dude brings up a lot of good points. That's all I'm gonna say. I can't remember what show that they have these conversations, but I don't know, a ton of shows kind of okay, this is exactly what it's reminding me of. It's reminding me, I just finished rewatching Daredevil. It reminds me of season 2 when they're on the roof, the Punisher and Daredevil are having a conversation. It's very similar to this, where you think that you're different and you're being the righteous version of what you think you are, but at your core you're almost the same as the bad guys you fight. And I love that they're bringing it up in this. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in that whole series, because it's just a conversation. Like, I think the best parts of superhero medium is when you can garner excitement from a conversation. And I feel like very few do that, but when they do it, it's amazing. So that's exactly what I feel like. The dude's bringing up a lot of points, the good points. You know, you can't, and even Mark can't really argue with him. He's kind of like, I kind of get it, but he is also trying to instill the perspective of like humanity, which obviously he doesn't have a full grasp on. But still, there's two sides to every story. You know, you can always be the villain in someone's story. It's all about perspective. So I really like that scene. I thought it was pretty fantastic. And again, Eve being there is so important, and I love it so much.
Which is also a new addition, like we talked about before, really kind of bringing Eve more into the, you know, the plot of things. And I think it really just highlights Mark's good qualities. But I love that correlation you made with the Daredevil thing, because I think that's totally on point. Oliver, that's the thing about Oliver in the book, is he has good points, but he just delivers them very coldly. And like, so this conversation in the book happens right after he kills the Maulers. So I just feel like in that context, it kind of changes the dynamic of this conversation. But seeing it happen after like things are a little better and like their training, I think makes it a bit, like you said, it makes Oliver, you can understand more where he's coming from. But TJ, same. Are you loving Oliver, hate him? And also, let's get into the Thraxan of it all. How he, going back to our theme of, is Omni-Man redeemable? So obviously, Oliver's perspective, he has only seen Omni-Man be good, and he can remember every moment of his life. So what do you think? Is Oliver onto something with Omni-Man? Do you agree with that thought line? And like Sean said, do you think he brings up good points?
I think he brings up good points, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with the thought process, but I fully understand the thought process, and that's why this was my favorite part of the episode. And I love what Pierre said here, because like he says, like the more sympathetic portrayal of this, when he potentially goes off the rails a little bit, and as a foil, vice versa, Omni-Man, the terrible things he has done, those moments in their stories are going to make the potential redemption arc, the potential fall from grace, all the more meaningful. They're going to hit so much harder. And so I love the way they're portraying these on both sides, but honestly, not so much in like it didn't resonate for me as much in the father-son type scenario, although I'm sure there are a lot of relationships out there where, say, you know, you could pull through lines from real life into this, where, say, like an abusive father was abusive to one of the kids and not the other one, and how those two kids are obviously going to have two totally different perspectives of who their dad is. And I think that is such an interesting theme to look at, because it shows that, like, reality is perspective. It's different for every single person. No two people have the same outlooks on reality because they have different lived experiences. And it reminds me of, with like the through line that I really connected with, is it like reminded me of, we've all either been in a situation or have had friends in a situation where you're telling them or they're telling you, you can't date this person. They're terrible. Like, they've cheated on their last 7 partners. They're doing all these bad things. Like, you don't want to date them. They suck. And it doesn't matter how much you hear that, even if people who you trust implicitly are telling you that, until you feel it, it's hard to actually believe it. You know, when your experience is like, this person is treating me so well and I feel so loved, it's difficult to believe, no matter how much you trust somebody, what they're telling you, like, no, they're terrible. You should not be with them. And so I totally get where Oliver's coming from in that case of, like, he doesn't know that version of his dad. His lived experiences are my dad being a dad and my dad being a really nice guy. And so, because of, you know, no matter how many terrible things Omni-Man has done, because everyone's perception is different of him, I do think that'll lead to potential redemption for him in a lot of people's eyes. You know what I mean? And it's a really awesome way, once again, pulling it back to the Powerplex stuff. It's a really awesome way of humanizing this super insane, unrealistic show. It's a way that grounds it in reality.
You cooked that, dude. This is why I love having y'all here, because y'all bring the deep analysis. I would have never got to that, but I agree 1,000%, and definitely makes me. I mean, it literally makes me think of the whole dynamic differently now with what you said. Like, I mean, that's such a great point with the lived experience, and again, that's why Oliver is so different from Mark. Even with Debbie's influence, he's still very much, I would say, more influenced by his time with Omni-Man, even though he was a baby. And I don't know if he said this in this episode. I could just be misremembering, but going back to kind of like his views on humanity and like how he explains to Mark, like, I remember everything, so like I just kind of see things differently, is he mentions how, like, in the Thraxan culture, since their lifespans are so short, 9 months, that basically their entire society is built on the idea of doing what you can for the next generation, for the next people, because everything that they do is they're gonna be gone, basically. So like the wealth of the individual, or like the well-being of the individual, is not what their concern is. They're concerned of the well-being of the whole. So in Oliver's eyes, humanity kind of goes against everything that Thraxan culture kind of stands for, where, you know, again, how he sees it, humans are selfish. They're only concerned about themselves. They're only concerned about, you know, them or, like, you know, someone that they love, but they don't care about the rest of the world. So I feel like that just adds a little bit of context of why Oliver is so just like, it again, the Debbie influence doesn't work as well on him as it did on Mark, because he can just remember his, you know, the things that his people did stand for. And at the end of the day, again, he's not human. Even though he looks like a little kid, he's 100% alien. But getting back to Powerplex, because again, he's obviously the major thing of this episode. I want to talk about. So again, he steals those discs from the GDA. It helps him just kind of control his powers, and like that's what allows him to shoot the energy into like a controlled blast. But the part I found really interesting was his wife. So his wife is always complicit in these plans in the book, but it does not, like the whole thing with the sledgehammer did not happen. And I just thought that again added to the intensity of his conviction against Invincible, but also the wife's. Because again, she's always involved, but she seems very more in tune and on the same level as Scott, especially in this moment. So TJ, what did you think of this whole kind of dynamic between Powerplex and his wife? And feel free to kind of skip ahead too. We get a couple scenes of them together.
She's devious. She's devious as hell. And I did think it was really interesting and poetic the way that they were portraying these two storylines at the same time of like, Mark's never been doing better at this point. He's figuring things out with Oliver. He's at a high point in his relationship with Eve. He's got a great relationship with his mom. Life is good. And for Powerplex, it's like just on this constant, not even downward spiral, but like just being stuck in hell, essentially. Like just being stuck in a spot where you're constantly unhappy. You're constantly seeking vengeance. And so, yeah, I honestly thought she was devious and just kind of was like adding fuel to the fire of, you know, whatever the opposite of. It's going back to another Daredevil reference, how in actually a Punisher reference, going to season 2 of The Punisher, where Billy Russo, Jigsaw, has his little therapist. And, you know, she's not doing her therapist work. She ends up falling in love with him and is just adding fuel to his fire. And that's kind of what she reminded me of not somebody who's holding them down and there for them in a partnership, but they're just two hurt people who are constantly feeding each other's negative habits and feeding each other's negative thoughts and just making each situation they come to worse and worse.
100%.
Which is the opposite of what Eve is doing for Mark right now. Right? Like Eve is showcasing all of these positive attributes that Mark has that you don't necessarily see to the full extent in comics. And we are seeing that like have that feeling of like together, even Mark can do anything, no matter how much the odds are stacked against them. As long as they're good, they'll be good in the long run. Whereas with these two, it's like, it's just an opposite type of reaction. It's two chemicals that are mixing together, and when they do, you get an explosion. So it's really fun to see the two polar opposite relationships going on in the same episode.
Dude, again, if I had air horns in the chat for Tej, dude,
I'm telling you, like my analysis level that I don't have to host. It just goes.
Yes, I didn't even put together that correlation, but I mean, again, freaking cooked it, dude. That's 100% what's going on. And I also just very quickly, I love with her hitting him with the sledgehammer, which I could be misremembering if I can talk how this went down. But as far as I remember, Powerplex just kind of has these powers of absorbing energy. And again, the discs allow him to exert that energy, but it doesn't really specify how like he gathers energy by being hit. Like it talks about it a little bit, but doesn't physically show it like it does here with the sledgehammer and later when he jumps off the building. And again, it's like Powerplex is all about pain, like the pain that he feels from his sister dying. So to have his powers be like enhanced by physical pain, I thought was just a really cool kind of parallel into like his whole ethos. But Sean, same thing, man. Powerplex and his wife, like TJ said, she's pretty devious, man.
Definitely devious. I did find another correlation that I'm not sure if it was done on purpose. I know she's voiced by Kate Mara, not Kristen Ritter, but I feel like the character design was made to look like Kristen Ritter to evoke the tragedy that happens at the end of this episode, just like in Breaking Bad. I don't know if that's just me and I made up some crazy theory. That's what I felt watching it. I was
that's
like,
good.
Did they do this on purpose? I don't know. Especially on a rewatch, I was like, looks a lot like Kristen Ritter. I don't know. And then obviously she ends her demise is very tragic. Brutal. So, but yeah, she is pretty, like even the kind of confrontation with Invincible is pretty brutal. And it's just like, again, it's all about perspective. And I kind of get why she's into it, but it also makes me so sad because they have a kid and they're trying to raise this kid like in literally a house full of hatred, which is so brutal and messed up. And like the more you think about that, the more messed up it gets. And how they bring that kid into the plan and put the kid directly in harm's way is so messed up.
Yeah, Kirkman, man, you're really coming with the gut punches because that was another thing that watching this episode, I was like, oh, they're just trying to, excuse me, they're just trying to hit us in the heart because Powerplex's kid in the book is not a baby. Like, he's not like a teenager. He's still, I would say, like maybe 6, 7. But when I saw that they made him a baby, I was like, okay, they're really just trying to hurt us with this episode. But something I want to bring up very quickly, because this is completely new for me and something I just want to theorize about. But Paul, Debbie's boyfriend, Paul. So Paul is in the book, but just kind of shows up in the background here and there. But I'm sus on Paul. I think Paul is suspect. I do not trust him. He seems off. Am I reading too much into this, or is he just a fun kind of addition to Debbie's life? Sean, what do you think?
I don't think he's off. I kind of just feel bad for him because I feel like he just feels so inferior to their life, and that makes me sad. Because I think like a normal partner is probably best for Debbie. She doesn't need another Superman-esque partner who ended up being, like the biggest traitor on Earth. Like she doesn't need that anymore. What if she ends
up getting together with Alan the alien? We get a little love triangle.
I mean, that's the best case scenario, okay? But that's you're shooting for the stars here, man. That's crazy. That's the best ship I've ever heard in my life, but I think it's a little far fetched if I'm being honest with you. But I will join that ship with you if you want, because it's great.
Debbie and Alan, let's go.
But wait, what happened to? Does Alan's girlfriend know he's alive? Oh man, that just made me more sad. Oh, God damn it! All right, well, thanks for that, TJ. I'm gonna be thinking about that all night now.
If it makes you feel any better, my former co-host of the Agents of Fandom podcast, his favorite Marvel movie was Avengers Infinity War, and I have forever ruined that movie for him because of a specific scene that I pointed out that it's stupid about how it goes.
Rocket Raccoon.
And so I'll hold that one in at least, but I do tend to ruin things for people, and it's not on purpose.
So you're talking about Groot, right? You got to be talking about Groot.
No, I'm gonna ruin it now. And it's the sheer audacity and ridiculousness. No matter how surprised and caught off guard Wanda and Vision are, it's that the Black Order goes and hunts Wanda and Vision, and they're like, "Oh, there's nothing we can do. We're the two of the most powerful beings in the universe, and there's nothing we can do." But wait. 2 regular humans and a super soldier are showing up, and now the day is saved. Cinematically, it works really good to have like Steve and Sam and Nat, they're all back. But from like a superhero standpoint, it's kind of ridiculous to have like the mega beings that nobody can stop because of how powerful they are. They get taken down, but the regular humans are here, so never fear.
Hey man, never doubt the strength of the human spirit. That's what it's all about, man. We rise. That's why we're awesome. That's why all the aliens want to kill us, dude. Even though America's a shithole, planet Earth is pretty dope in itself. But so TJ, what do you is Paul sus? Am I just again, because he's like this is a very new addition, so maybe I'm just like over analyzing it, like, oh, why are they bringing him in? Like, what role is he playing? And I think it was, excuse me, my voice is going out. You're not listening to a 12-year-old boy. This is just my voice going out. But like I said, I feel like something's up with him. He mentioned he has some sister. Like, what's that? Who's his sister? Maybe she's a bad guy or, another superhero. What do you think, TJ? Am I thinking too much into this?
Yeah, I don't know that you're necessarily thinking too much into it. I'll say it's not something I clocked as potential worry until you brought it up, and now I'm really second guessing it.
Rewatch that scene. I urge everyone rewatch that scene. I feel like he's a little weird.
As fans of the Comic Corner podcast will know, and as a Spider-Man fan like myself, I can't really go around trusting somebody by the name Paul, just because
Fair
Paul.
point.
And there's these such similarities to Mark Grayson and Peter Parker that I'm not about to trust a Paul that enters his life.
Never trust a Paul.
That, he does kind of give a little bit of like the too nice, too good of a guy vibes that remind me a little bit of like that dude in She-Hulk who goes on a date with her and then we find out he's just like the absolute worst and sleeps with her to get her DNA. And it's like, oh, I wanted this for her. He is such a nice guy. I do get those vibes from Paul a little bit. Too nice.
Well, I think you bring up a great point too. You know, it's a very common trope in pretty much any media. It's like, oh, this guy's cool, he's nice, something bad's probably going to happen. And like you said, it would be a gut punch for us because, like you said, it's like we want Debbie to be happy. We're all big fans of Debbie, so if like it doesn't work out for her, that's gonna freaking suck. And you know, they want us to feel emotions, right? They want us to be kind of hurt a lot of times. But we're closing in on 36. I can't believe we're 36 minutes in already. But we got to talk about the memorial too, because I think that all kind of goes into everything we're talking about, showing the real stakes, the real consequences of what Mark has done. And again, new scene for the show, which again, I just feel like really is hammering home the themes that are already in the book, but just kind of going deeper into them. And TJ, you already mentioned it, or maybe Sean, you mentioned it, but Powerplex and Eve facing off, which was freaking awesome. So TJ, I'll throw it off to you first on this one. The whole memorial thing, which I also want to bring up. If you look at some of the names on there, there's one that says just Justin, like that's his name, and I thought that was really funny. But TJ, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like it goes to the points that we talked about earlier. It really humanizes the superhero like the super heroic stories, right? And it does give the boys vibes a little bit where it's like you just have these crazy powered people coming in, and even no matter when we see the stories in depth, because we're being told the stories as viewers of the show, when you see it from a perspective that doesn't know those stories in depth, and they just see it as somebody like Huey at the beginning of The Boys, where it's like, I'm going for a walk. Bam, my girlfriend's gone because this dude who's fast as hell just blew her up. And that's kind of the perspective you're getting from these people at the memorial, where they don't give a damn about Mark's growth and Mark's trauma and Mark's struggles. They just know that their lives were turned upside down because of these two crazy super people.
100%. And it's like, they don't know, like you said, they don't know the whole story. They just saw Invincible, Omni-Man beating the shit out of each other, which is a big reason why Scott believes that they were working together. Like he basically believes that whole fight was just a ruse and like was just all fake, and Invincible was always working with Omni-Man. So
well, Sean, if he lived in any other universe, he'd be right.
Exactly. I mean, pretty much every other universe. But Sean, what did you think about the memorial? And like, again, just the kind of hitting home on the trauma of everyone, and like how Powerplex like starts blurting out the names of the people. Like that really got me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like I get why he's doing what he's doing, but I do like that he had like I said earlier, like I love how he had to keep like upping the ante to actually get Invincible's attention. And what a supportive move to have Eve handle it and her be like, no, because he didn't even want to go to the memorial because he's like, I caused this, I don't want to go. And she's like, you're not going as Invincible, you're going as Mark Grayson, and you're just there to pay tribute to the people that lost their lives that day, which like again just like echoes the fact of how much of a rock Eve is to Mark, and even being like, no, I got this. And she takes care of it. She even sees how he's drawing power. And I love that the Guardians of the Globe are integrated in this episode too, because like in a world like that, it would make sense that they would come and address this kind of situation. So that was like a nice little addition to be like, oh yeah, of course they would come kind of clean up the mess or be involved. Like that's obviously like a problem in a lot of comic book medium is, yeah, why wouldn't that person be there too? You know, so it's cool to see that kind of interconnectivity, if you will, within the show. So yeah, it's good stuff. Like I think this is like one of the strongest episodes of the series, maybe. I wouldn't say strongest, but I would say one of, because it's just like, I don't know, it's just a really great story and a really new perspective to the show, I think.
Number
to
2 of the
have
season for
be
me. I think I liked episode 4 better, and then this one second.
Which one was
Yeah, this is a good
episode 4 again? That wasn't the Immortal episode, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was.
Okay, so yeah, that was a freaking banger, dude. Another one of my favorite issues of the comics. We talked about this last time. Obviously, there's a lot of issues that, you know, lead into each other. We have our arcs, you know, small, long, but issues like this, the Powerplex issue, the Immortal issue, kind of more self-contained single stories that really highlight the kind of things Mark is going through, I really love. And another thing I want to mention really quickly, like Sean said about how like the Guardians of the Globe come in and Powerplex just like constantly trying to get Mark's attention. I thought it was really interesting how Mark purposely was like blowing him off. Like he sees him on the TV and he's like, oh, everyone else, they can handle it, right? The Guardians of the Globe got it, teams got it. Where in the books he's just like unaware. So I think that also kind of adds a little bit to this kind of, I don't want to get too much into it because I feel like it could get into some spoilers, but this kind of change in Mark's perspective of being a hero and, you know, what it really means. Then I think that's, again, what Powerplex basically represents is the cost of what comes from trying to do the right thing. But let's talk about this real quick. I was going to skip over it, but Rex is back, sticking with the sad theme of this episode. We get another new scene with Rex and Shrinking Ray. You know, they're cute little couple trying to make it work, and we get a little bit of Rex's backstory, which if you haven't read the comics, you probably don't know about it. So, TJ, I'll start with you on this one. What did you think of getting this little insight onto Rex, especially a character that starts off, I mean, for lack of a better term, pretty much an asshole?
Yeah, Rex has had a great redemption story because he doesn't need redeeming to the full extent like Omni-Man does. He wasn't a villain. He was just a little shit. He was just an asshole, like you said. And it's been nice to see him grow as a character throughout. I've talked about this earlier in the podcast, how it's fun, fresh, and different to get a Jason Mantzoukas character who's not either just like crazy or an asshole. And so it's fun to see him grow and see him become like a really good guy and a genuine hero. And, you know, it was a very devastating backstory, but like it didn't feel all that new to see it just because he's alluded to it so often throughout the first 3 seasons. But it was a fine addition to the episode. It just kind of felt like the afterthought almost after with all the other things going on.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I like the Rex and Shrinking Ray stuff, especially like knowing why like they're highlighting certain, you know, personality traits, I guess you could say, of Rex. But I agree, it's definitely on the back burner for me of, you know, plot lines in the episode. But I'll just say, like, I really wish that they would have shown like what he's talking about, even just a little bit, just because he definitely does have like one of the saddest backstories. And I'm hoping, I think we talked about this before, but I really hope that we get some more of these one-shot kind of specials. And I would really love if we just got one for every Guardian member, basically, of just like their origin, like how we did with Adam Eve, which is something they did in the comics. So, you know, fingers crossed, because I would really love for fans to fully see Rex's story. But Sean, same thing. We all, I think, kind of agree that this plot line is on the back burner for us. But what did you think of getting this insight into Rex?
Yeah, definitely on the back burner of like the importance of what's going on in the episode for sure. But I just love this little redemption arc for Rex and seeing this blossoming relationship that's obviously new to the show because Shrinking Ray was, dead at this point.
Eaten alive. Which wouldn't it be
even
not like funny,
worse.
but wouldn't it be so funny if like the Lizard League just ate her again, and that that's how she died after all this? Like that'd be kind of funny. But sorry to interrupt you.
A thing that does worry me is the conversation they have and talking about there's got to be more than life than just being this, because both of them, their whole life has been like bred to be a superhero, and she's quitting the team because she wants a life, like an actual life, and her being like, well, it's either we do this until we die from something or we can go live our own life. And that has me worried.
Yeah, definitely. I love that point because, like
big
you said, definitely adds just kind of a cloud of doom over the whole thing. And I mean, hey, I'm rooting for him. While I don't think it's gonna happen in the way that they want it to, I'm still rooting for him. And I just think it also goes to, I think a very big theme of this whole season is, we talked about this last week, but like the heroes trying to have normal lives, or at least semi-normal lives, and just finding out like that's not possible. And no matter what they do, and I think that line you just brought up kind of encapsulates that perfectly. And I really like that they're doing this season, like I said, kind of showing that there's really no other possibility for them than being heroes. And I think that applies too with like Eve going to architect school, which is new for the show, but I think just adds to this whole thing of everyone trying to balance being a hero and a real person, which we see with Mark in this episode, but it's just not happening. And that brings us perfectly, I think, right into the big fight of this season, of this episode. We already talked about it a little bit. If you're tuned into this, I would hope that you watched the episode already, but spoiler alert, Powerplex's family get burnt to a crisp, and it is very tragic. I feel like it's a moment that people can read a couple different ways. So before I say anything, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. TJ, obviously Powerplex is responsible in this scenario, but do you also feel for him a little bit, or just, yeah, he's an idiot and him and his wife did the terrible thing? Or like I said, do you think that Mark is a little responsible? While he didn't physically kill them, all of this is a result of, again, his failure. So how do you read this?
I don't honestly think this is a result of his failure. I think this was Powerplex's own damn fault. I felt bad about him earlier in the season, earlier in the episode, felt bad for him and was sympathizing with him. But at a certain point, you just got to face the consequences of your actions. And yes, sure, the dominoes began to fall with Mark's fight, but none of this really was his fault. He can't control the actions of all the people he has affected throughout the rest of his life. And so I was sympathizing with Powerplex earlier, but it gets to a certain point where it's like, dude, you fucked around and now you're finding out. Like, classic case of that right there. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I felt bad for the little baby, but the parents, it was like, what did you expect at this point? Like, come on.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, it's hard to argue with that. Sean, what do you think? Do you have a little bit more forgiveness for Powerplex in his situation, or are you a teach, screw the guy, screw his wife, not the baby, because he's innocent?
I mean, I don't think the wife deserved what happened to her, but I mean, she definitely set it up to deal with the consequences of her own death. I agree with TJ where it's like, I don't think this instance is Mark's fault at all. Maybe he was the catalyst, way down the road, or like way before this, I guess, to lead to this point. But it's the perfect example of how vengeance never works. Like, your path for vengeance, it never ends the way you think it's going to. And I feel like this is going to be the year of the passive vengeance not being a thing. Is the cycle of violence is always a thing that's going to be prevalent in everything, but I love when media puts a microscope on it, because it is a very interesting kind of thing to study of, eye for an eye. Like, it never works out that way. And for people who know what's coming in The Last of Us, it's definitely going to be explored very insanely in that show. And from what I hear about Daredevil Born Again, it's going to be featured in that as well. And those stories are interesting because it's like, as we've talked about, it's all this very complicated, morally gray kind of stuff they're dealing with here. And you put people in your shoes, and it's like, yeah, you probably would want to go after that vengeance too. But there's a certain point when you have to realize that that vengeance isn't the closure you're seeking, and it's not going to give you all the feelings you want. And we even see it from Mark's perspective when Mark, after he gets taken in, and Mark goes to talk to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, you know their names now. Now I'm supposed to forgive you." And it's like, it's brutal, but it's kind of true. But I still wouldn't, like, it sucks because I don't think, I get why Mark feels bad, and I would feel bad in that situation too. But at the same time, it's like all collateral damage. I'm not saying collateral damage isn't important. It is, but it's like, how do you manage that when you operate at a level you do, like Invincible? Like, if you worry about all those things, not saying you should totally disregard them, but like, that's going to kill you inside if you try to worry and think about all those things. It's literally impossible. But it kind of just adds to what TJ said. It's like these superheroes trying to balance these normal lives, which we see, of course, in like Batman and Spider-Man and stuff like that. Batman's more of like, that's just a cover. It's not even really he's trying to balance. that's his front.
And Spider-Man does it terribly.
Yeah, and Spider-Man, it always ends up bad for him. So, but I kind of, again, it's like going back to the Mark and Eve thing. It's like cool that he has that because he's not sacrificing one or the other for it. It's already intertwined with his world as a superhero. So it kind of, it's like a cheat code for him in that regard. And I'm glad that that's there, because it's like a nice little like, oh yeah, we can get around this because she's involved in both. So it's like a good way to keep that intact. I mean, obviously being in the profession they're in, that doesn't ensure safety and stability because when there's aliens always coming in to try and kill you, who knows what's to happen. But yeah, I don't feel like this is not Mark's fault what happened, and why I still might feel for Powerplex in the grand scheme of things. Like, what happened to his wife and kid is his fault 1,000%.
Yeah, I mean, again, y'all cooked that. I don't even really have much to add to that. I love, the thing about the vengeance and how it never works out. I think, again, you're 100% on the money here. Again, you guys cooked it well enough. The only thing I'll add is I'm a sucker for the kind of thought process of, all villains think that they're the hero, right? Like, everyone thinks that what they're doing is the right thing. And obviously Powerplex exemplifies that, which is why I agree with you guys. I don't put Mark responsible for the deaths of his family, but I do feel for him still, because like I said, he, at the end of the day, him and his wife, while going about it very wrong ways, they truly believe that like they're doing the right thing. Like, they're going to expose the crimes of Invincible and like bring justice to everyone who was affected by that, which is a noble mission. But again, just like really takes a dark, twisted turn. And I think that it also applies to Mark as well, because like we talk about, he is evil in every other multiverse. And just like how Powerplex was convinced he was doing the right thing and had to go to drastic means in order to achieve that, Mark fits that category a lot. And so I really think it's a cool little parallel, and also kind of a foreshadowing of, what if Mark didn't make the right decision? What if Mark, is so, because again, that's a very common theme I think we've seen, especially with him and Cecil, is like he is very convicted on what he thinks is right. But the problem is Mark isn't always right. So I'll kind of leave it at that, and we gotta theorize, man, because like you said, this is the first time this whole season that we don't know what's coming. I mean, we will in about like 10 minutes because we all just got the newest episodes. But for now, before next week, Well, we got to get to theories because we are left with the big tease of Angstrom Levy. Speaking of multiverse marks, Angstrom Levy has assembled an army of them, and they are all very bad news. So let's get to theorizing. Since I am fully aware of the things that could be happening, I'll go last. But Sean, what do you think, man? What do you think we're in store for these last 2 episodes?
Well, I don't know all the details, but I know they're adapting the Great Invincible War from the comics. And I just finished an article that will probably come out today or tomorrow, I'm sure, on Collider, talking about how now we know what all the title cards were alluding to this whole season, which was the many versions of Mark. So I do a nice little breakdown on, for one, how all the title cards in Invincible for each season all had their own meanings, and specifically what this season means and the complexity of Angstrom coming back, especially seeing as that's been like his whole crutch of this season is him debating if killing him was the right answer. So it's like, what if the guy you killed, you thought you killed, comes back with an army of evil versions of yourself? Was that the right thing to do, or maybe should he have tried harder? I don't know. It's a very complicated situation, but this is going to be a wild time. Like I said, I had to do some research in order to write this article, and I'm working on pitching another article for the end of the season of Invincible too. So I had to do some separate research in that too. So I kind of have a lay of the land of what these two last episodes will entail, but not to the full extent that I think they're going to put in this show. And as we've seen, good old Mr. Kirkman likes to shake things up a bit. So I'm interested to see if he switches anything up there. But I read a little bit about a few of the marks, and yikes, we're in for some nasty stuff.
Yeah, like I said, they're very, very nasty, and I am definitely seeing some changes happening for this thing, for the Invincible War. And also, Sean, you're copying me, man. I just did an Invincible War article, so I don't know if you're sneaking peeks onto my Amaki or what. But TJ, what do you think?
Can I do that?
I don't know. Let's find out. But TJ, what do you think of the Invincible War, man? Like, what do you think? I'll save it, but do you think we're going to get the entire thing by the end of the season, or are we going to be left, like, I could see us maybe being left like in the middle of it and leaving it as a cliffhanger for next? What do you think?
I mean, my understanding is that this is like a single issue of a comic book, and, you know, people are really hyping it up because it's a pretty big deal, but single issue nonetheless. So I do think we'll see maybe they're stretching it out into 2 episodes and it's a 2-part conclusion of the Invincible War. But I think for the most part, it will be concluded in this season, as much as anything is concluded in Invincible, right? Like, there are always doors left open to face future consequences of whatever their current actions are, as we see with the Powerplex thing from season 1 coming all the way back till now. So I'm sure there will be long-term consequences of the event, but I think the battle itself likely wraps itself up. And frankly, no matter how devastating and traumatizing it is, as long as Mark, Eve, and Debbie are okay, I'm good. If anything happens to Mark, Eve, or Debbie, especially Debbie, I'm going to war. Now, if something happens to Oliver, whatever, Oliver is going to... I mean, I feel like I know Oliver is going to turn into a bad guy, so I don't actually worry about it that much. But Oliver, Mark, Eve, and Debbie, specifically Debbie, if anything happens to them, I'm throwing hands.
So, yeah.
I don't like that face.
And
you're not getting nothing from
And
me.
I'm very happy to get some Sterling K. Brown back, because he is just absolutely incredible.
Yo.
And
I'm claiming it.
Bring up right now
the
that
year
episode
Paradise?
7 of Paradise. Holy!
I was just saying Paradise. Yes, y'all need to watch That last episode might be the best episode of TV I've seen this year.
Until tonight. Until
Severance tonight.
I would say Severance or episode 4 to Severance was my favorite up until Paradise, but Oh, me and Tej were already
Oh.
nerding out about Severance before we hopped on here. I am
Dude,
more than
episode
ready.
7 is like
Don't
a movie.
tell me. I don't want. I don't
Perfect
want
time
to.
to
I don't want
plug
to know.
that on Friday, myself and Rachel Leishman and Leah Marilla of the Mary Sue will be talking and breaking down episode 7 of Severance at 5 p.m. on Friday Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific, like we are every Friday. But rumor has it that episode 7 is bonkers. It's wild, and I'm looking forward to covering this one. So stay tuned for our Severance breakdown every Friday, 5 p.m.
Sorry,
Yes.
I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear anyone's thoughts on this episode. I want to go in blind. But going back to the Invincible War, I don't know what to expect, honestly. I've read, and TJ, thanks for bringing up this point. Invincible War, like you said, is only one issue, but it is such, at least for me, it's such an impactful issue. It feels like multiple in just the, 24 pages. It might be a little longer than that, but man, it's so great. I don't want to, build up people's expectations too much, but I think it also, same thing we're talking about, it's like almost the ultimate representation of what I was talking about with Powerplex is, again, Mark coming face to face with his mistakes, with the consequences of his actions, even if it's across the multiverse. Like, he literally has to face himself, and because of the mistakes that he has made. So it's so great. But what I'm getting at, though, is I really don't know how it's going to play out, because while it is one issue, I could totally, like Pierre is saying here in the chat, I could totally see them using up those last 2 episodes for it, because there is so much that happens. I almost worry that one episode would make it feel rushed, and just like because again, so many things are happening at once. So part of me feels like it could take up the last 2, but then also readers of the Book of Mark will know that there is also a massive event that happens almost immediately after Invincible War. So that leads me to think they could hit us with a good 1-2 punch and just break our hearts and then stomp on it for the last
If
episode.
Debbie dies, I'm not watching this show ever again.
I'm going to look
You're a
away so
liar.
you can't read my face. But yeah,
I don't know.
I said, like I said, I don't know. Pierre, maybe you can let me know what you think. You seem very in tune to the works. I don't know if we're going to end off on Invincible War, or really, Sean, I think you know what I'm alluding to, but I also think that would be a great ending to the season. Like, just leave us in total despair and not knowing.
I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch.
You think? You think we're going 1-2?
Because think about it this way. These episodes, I mean, they're longer than they used to be. They're almost an hour long. And they pack so much in this episode. So instead of focusing on these side stories, it's more of you're seeing the effects of the Invincible War just on different fronts. I think they can fully make it happen in one episode and make it feel not rushed. So I do think that would be a good, and then the thing coming after that, we both know is coming right after, like, that's a finale episode. I mean, I think the Invincible War is a very big thing too, but having both back to back would be nuts.
And I feel like they've gone there plenty of times thus far, so I feel like they are willing to, like, I feel like some shows would hold back off that, right? It's like we're getting an insane crazy event and then like save the next one, but Kirkman's hitting the gas, and
Invincible
so
doesn't hold anything back. Invincible, whatever you think Invincible's going to be, amplify it by 10, and you're somewhere in the right ballpark.
Yeah, so I'm hoping, like I said, while I love the Invincible War and I would like to see it stretched across 2 episodes, I'm with you, Sean. I'm really hoping for the 1-2 punch. Tej, before we get out of here, do you have anything else to say about these last 2 episodes? Any other theories or hopes besides Debbie making it out okay?
No, as long as Debbie and Eve are fine, as long as my girls are good, we are fine and ready to go. But no big theories. I'm excited to have the return of Angstrom. I'm excited for those, for some Invincible War stuff. I've liked how Invincible has done the multiverse so far, and so I'm looking forward to getting to see that in this episode. But usually I'm ripe with theories and filled with them, but there's not all that many threads for me to theorize with. You know, I don't feel like anything's going to happen with
It's pretty
Oliver
clear what's
for a
coming.
while. Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's pretty clear what's coming, and it's just how that is going to unfold. I don't know, but will the Alan the Alien and Omni-Man come back for it? That would be something I think is really cool. Is maybe they help Mark win the battle. Something like that I think would be pretty dope. But other than that, I love a squad. I love a team up. So that's kind of my hope. But outside of that, I don't really have anything because it's like we're just gonna get a big battle and something crazy is gonna happen at the end.
Hey, we love big battles. We love the punchy fighty
Big
stuff.
monster.
And monsters, punchy fighty. It's all going down in these last 2 episodes of Invincible. And of course, we will be back for the next 2 weeks to break it all down for you, talk with you about it, and just genuinely nerd out about this amazing show. I mean, I've said it before, this show is one of, if not the best comic book adaptations I have ever seen. It just brings the story to life in no other way. But I'm going to throw it off to y'all. Sean, let us know what, like you just said, you just did a Invincible War article. I know you're working on a bunch of other great stuff. And then TJ, you can take us out. Sean, what are you working on?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were glossing.
Oh no, I'm saying after you plug yourself, then TJ can plug us and we can get out of here.
Yeah, metalcorenerds.com. You can find the podcast there. Just band dudes talking about nerd stuff. If you are into that, of course, my article is up at Collider, and I'm working on some new reviews for the Agents of Fandom as well. I got a really cool Daredevil article dropping on Saturday on Collider, talking about that big one-take fight in season 3. So it's perfect to read and get yourself amped up for Daredevil Born Again. And I also have a Reacher one coming out too, to talk about where they can take season 4.
Reacher,
and
so hard,
but
dude.
We got a few reviews locked down for March for Agents of Fandom, and TJ and I are working out some interviews and such. So be on the lookout for that.
Exciting things coming. I just gotta say real quick, Reacher absolutely rips. Y'all should check that out if you're not watching it. And also, shameless plug for myself. I think I've written more Invincible articles than anyone this season. So if y'all want to go check out more about the Invincible comics, you can check out my articles over at CBR. But Teach, let everyone know. Sean gave us a great rundown of some stuff coming, but let the people know what else we got. Everything basically.
Everything basically, you nailed it. It's Agents of Fandom on TikTok and Twitter. Agents of Fandom on Instagram and Facebook, at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, agentsoffandom.com for all of our stuff, and on the YouTube and podcast feeds right now. You can find my brand new interview with Daredevil Born Again showrunner Dario Scardipan, as well as executive producer Sana Amanat. We had a really nice conversation. They teased some cameos. They talk about what it takes to make a proper Daredevil show. And so you can find that full article up on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page or wherever you get your podcasts, as well as my interviews with Robert Kirkman and Invincible showrunner Simon Rasiopa, Captain America Brave New World director Julius Ona. And we got some fun things coming in the future as well, like Sean talked about. And courtesy to you, TJ Fat Thor, for helping organize this with us. But on Monday, don't know what time yet, but on Monday, we'll be talking to Cobra Kai and your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man composer. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're still sorting out the details, but we'll be getting that to you next week. Plus, we got some other great Comic Corner interviews coming as well. TJ, you've had one with Jeremy Adams that'll be dropping next week as well. So lots of great stuff. Every Tuesday night, we're going to be live talking Daredevil Born Again. First episode and second episode come out this coming week, March 4th. We'll be breaking it down every single Tuesday. Every Thursday, we'll be back talking Invincible. Every Friday, we will be back talking Severance, and then of course the Comic Corner on Saturday. You can find our merch, like the cool hoodie I'm wearing right now, at fandomify.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find it on the bottom of the screen. And YouTube, shout out to our chat once again. Thank you for hanging out. We got Pierre, who's been a pillar in the
shout out
Invincible
Pierre,
Heroes.
man. You were killing it in the comments, man. Thank you for tuning in.
Absolutely. And we got Marie Donyeezy, we got Garrett, we got Damon, we got AF, we even have,
All the homies.
believe it or not, Robo Bird hanging out with us here. So we got a great we got Sensitive Blick from the beginning of the show. Great chat hanging out today. We thank all of you for joining. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when all of our shows go live.
And that's all we got for you this week. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you Thursday, baby, for Invincible number 7.